once I start planning each session, which will be every week that I'm actually playing the game, because I'm going to incorporate then what my characters have done, what they've uncovered, and then I will also change things up based on what they decisions they've made. So let's talk about Happy Camper and what I actually created to explain this world to players and even GMs that might want to run this when I'm done. It needs to be done first, but I have a good template, but it is not done yet. So the lore and mechanics of this Happy Camper world are as such. Happy Camper's setting is an overnight summer camp. And so one of the issues I found in the first campaign was that some people had never actually experienced a summer camp, so they didn't know what you did at a summer camp or what a summer camp actually was, other than what they had seen on like television. So I here actually explain that a summer camp is a fun but structured set of outdoor skill-based experiences catered for children and teenagers. So it gives them a lot of information. It tells them that this is going to be like outdoors, number one. That's kind of important to know when you go to a summer camp. It's going to be skill-based, so you're going to be actually learning stuff. That's why it's fairly structured. And then it is specifically usually catered for children and teenagers. And so that is the age range that my players should be thinking of when they go into this world. And I will tell them like what level or what year or like where they are in the camp so that they know what age range to choose. I think last time they could choose up to 16, so they were in like the adventure adventure category. So like these are kids that would usually go to camp for a week to 2 weeks and do a lot of exploratory camping, usually outside of the camp because they're older. So the Happy Camper setting is on the material plane, and there are portals that can traverse between planes, but only two other planes between the Shadowfell, Feywild, and the material plane. However, they're not accessible to people, like regular people. The only people who have access to the portals are very powerful individuals like the conglomerate that is the Happy Camper company. So Happy Camper, like the hope what this whole campaign is called, is the series. This is a fairly homebrew world, but it is utilizing the general rule books of D&D. But some things are specific to a summer camp or camping experience to kind of bring in the camp, the like CAMP, like, 80s camp. It is trying to bring that because that is the joke to the game, as well as kind of like an 80s camp horror, because that is essentially the genre. So I talk about how Happy Camper is a role play game that prioritizes character development both off and on the field of battle. Your character has just as much opportunity to level up from taking risks and befriending NPCs and uncovering major plot points in the mystery as they will in defeating an enemy. Happy Camper is a high risk, high reward game. It is a game more of strategy and mystery. You want to take enough risks to uncover the truth, but to stay alive long enough to see the truth unfold. I also introduced a new character, and again, I'm kind of using quotations because the architect is also the GM, but the GM is very much a storyteller. And I mean that in the sense of like World of Darkness storyteller, as well as the GM is the person not only like planning your adventure, but the architect, who is a character that the GM plays, is also telling your story. They are the keeper of your lore. And so players will discuss things like levels and spells and abilities, as well as review like their clues and mysteries that they've gathered. And that will only happen every 2 sessions. So this idea of the campfire is essentially a planning tool for me and the players. This really gives us specific time every other session to come together and review and also look at stats and levels and abilities and things like that. So the campfire is an open forum. This is the time to ask questions, gain clarifications, and even plan the next 2 sessions. One of the things I like to say in this game in particular is that remember that everything means something. Sometimes it's best simply to ask the architect, does this mean something? Listen, the first season was insane. I was insane. There were I put literally clues everywhere, and they did not look at half of them. A third of them, honestly. There's so much to explore that if you don't explore, you will miss most of the stuff. So a lot of exploration is expected, and it is what is going to propel you into really understanding the mystery of the world. So in my first season, I had a couple of mechanics, one of them being a D4 and a D6, which meant certain things. We've gotten rid of the D6 just because I realized we didn't use it much and it didn't serve the purpose that I was wanting it to serve. But the D4 was very, very useful. And so what the D4 did was it helped characters and me keep track, honestly, of all of the mysteries. Remember, there's tons of mysteries and tons of clues. In Happy Camper, everything, everyone, and every time is connected. So remember that I now know what's going to happen in the entire campaign and what's going to happen each season. But remember that this world transverses a lot of things. It transverses time, it transverses space. Rolling a d4 simply denotes severity. So 1 to 2 is not so bad. 3 is pretty bad, and 4 is, oh, this is gonna hurt. It just puts another element of, I don't even want to say fear, but another element of danger. And of course, contestant roles. Contestant roles are not new, but this is going to be heavy. So these mechanics are simply explaining to the player what is most important to developing the story and completing your adventures, completing your quests. So for contestant roles, Happy Camper is full of very friendly people. Again, the quotations. I do love quotations. Non-player characters or NPCs are important in this world, and so I really want that to be very clear to my players. They can be the key to unlocking a mystery or be the ultimate side quest that levels you up. NPCs walk through this world, time and space just like you, which means that in my head, I know what the NPCs are doing when you're not interacting with them. The NPCs that will interact with players, particularly the important NPCs, they have character sheets just like you do. They may be very high in deception or perception, and they may be looking straight through your bowl. The fun part is trying to figure out who can be trusted through roleplay and the roll of the dice. So the architect. So I talked about the architect a little bit about how they are both the GM and the GM playing a character that is the architect. But the purpose of the architect is to bring in that camp. The architect is playing the storyteller. It plays on your fear of opening that door in the dark basement or walking down an ice cold hallway all by yourself. This is a horror game, and I will be giving you all the horror. It also plays on the ghost story trope. So a lot of tropes are being used in this game as I go through that's about camp, summer camp, horror, camp horror, and one of them being the ghost story, which is why the architect is your storyteller. They are the one telling your story. So the GM is playing a character who is either telling your glorious story of legend and fame, or is writing your character's name on a tombstone. So remember how I talked about creating or redoing the camp maps, just the one right now, but there will be multiple camp maps. Well, I already did that, and I also created a world map for outside of the camp, because remember that the camps live in a pocket dimension where you enter it through the actual world, and that world now has a name called Hypheron. I already have an idea of the world, but I solidified it as I was creating this map. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of continents on this map, a lot of places for, you know, our heroes to travel to. This could be a good long campaign, and this is just Hypharon at one point and one time. So this is Hypharon today. It looked different, obviously, thousands of years ago, and it'll look different thousands of years in the future. And that's what's so great about tabletop games and building stories in tabletop games. Okay, I think that is it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you are interested in learning what Happy Camper actually is, how you can play the game, and when my next season is going to start, I am going to post my next video next Friday talking all about Happy Camper. So thank you all for watching, and see you next time.